Good day, everybody. Sunday. Decided to try to get some worm castings out of here and maybe make a little room. And my bin was really wet last time we were in here that was Tuesday, I believe it was. And I thought, well, why not just take some off the top and these guys are busy. They're all up on top giving her crap. But it is wet, I can tell you that. I'm just going to skim this stuff back here. Oh, excuse me. How's everybody doing these days? Our weather is turning back warm again, so we're kind of enjoying some nice forecasts. Very little worms. I got lots of babies in here. Alrighty, let's start. So I'm just going to fold this out of the road. I'm not going to take it out because it's pretty much toast. But I'll dump my overs back in there. And I'm just going to start by taking the top, because I know once I get down below, I'm going to be playing with some higher moisture content. Because I left it for 2 weeks last time, and yeah, well, it might be shooting myself in the foot when it comes to sifting, but it takes less time to maintain my bins. So we're just gonna see, and you know, doing it this way, maybe you gotta take less at a time. I think it'll work out just fine anyways, because as you take that and make room, you got more room in the bin. Still makes some really nice castings. And actually, it's not doing too bad. Nice worms. It is getting more moisture as we go down, but that's okay. Take what we can get, put the rest, stir the rest up, and set it to dry some more. Maybe next week we'll take some more. I guess Plant Obsessed on YouTube, she does a lot like this with her blue bin, but I think she leaves it longer in between. She does really big feedings and then she leaves it longer and they go through it better. And I don't know. I'm just kind of going by what I see on YouTube. And she just takes less at a time, I guess, which still gives her lots of product. So we're gonna try. try it. We're still taking a fair bit out of here. Come back here and take some of this. The moisture content's going to be higher back here because it was covered tighter with the plastic, right? So we'll just take what we can and then we'll give it a fluff and move stuff to where we need it. And it'll be fine. There's no set rules on how you have to do your casting harvests, or I mean, you can do it once a week, you can do it once a month. Do part of the bin, you can do the whole bin. Really is just a matter of personal preference. So my bins and my farm is definitely getting more active because I've got more worms. I mean, as I am into this longer, I get a better population. I get better conversion, I guess, of the raw materials that I'm putting in faster. So that in turn speeds up my production of castings. So I think the last time I sifted was January 7th. We're now at like, whatever here, February 17th, maybe 18th. What on earth is that? Whatever it is, there's a worm in it. So as I've explained before when I was sifting in some of my previous sifting videos, and I'm going to just touch on it for some of the newer subscribers. So when I sift, there's stuff left in the screens. Those are my overs because they're on top of the screen. And so that, I return it back to my bin with the worms and whatever material is not going through the screen. So these are my overs. There's worms in here, there's seeds in here, cardboard. So that inoculates the back end of my bin where all that dry paper is. Coming down to the area here, it's probably too wet pretty soon. But we'll just go as far as we can and then we'll move on. And I'm going to do the double sift of my castings again and put the cocoons and whatever baby worms stay on the next overs, the second batch of overs, into my new herb bin that we're setting up. Try to get it a little more active. And as you do that, you add a huge amount of activity to your new setup bins because you're adding cocoons. And baby worms to that new bin, and that gets everything more active in there. Like I just pulled out a lot of worms in this bunch, right? But those are going back into this bin. There's a lot of worms in this bin. People have asked me how many worms I think are in this bin, and I'd have to guess 3,000. A lot of worms. Like my feed zone is just, maybe we'll do, when we do a mix up here, we'll show you what the feed zone looks like. You'll see there is a schwack of worms in here. So just to give you an idea, there's probably 40 worms. There's probably 30 worms. And this is not the most active end of the bin. The most active part of the bin is in the feed zone. There's a lot of worms back here yet, but there's a lot more worms up there. So quite a few worms. And I never sit and rub them on the screen until they're bruised up and damaged. I only take it down to where, you know, they're starting to, like where the screen's starting to show, and there's always other material in with them, so they don't really get scuffed up from the screen like some people explain that their worms get scruffed up. And mine, I don't see that. I don't see that because there's so much other stuff, and I'm not mechanically, like I'm not running a mechanical shifter. This is all hand powered, so I can monitor it and I can watch it as it's happening. And I'm not, like, a lot of these worms are not even touching the screen. They're just floating around in that bigger material. We're getting a good fair amount out of this, and over there I'm seeing a pile of cocoons in the siftings over there, and we'll get some of them out. We're not gonna get them all out. It's wet. It's definitely getting to the borderline. I'm getting to the borderline area here where we're gonna be done soon. A lot of worms in there. And I've learned, don't overfill your sifter. It doesn't work if you got too much in it. And you have to have room for the product to move around and get over the screen and sift through the screen. There's a lot of worms. We're going to take as much as we can out because you might as well take what you can when you're doing it. There's no use stopping and saying you'll do it again next week. For the little bit of time it takes to set up labor-wise to do it, it's still, you got to set up, you got to get your stuff ready to do, and then you got to do it. Then you got to handle the castings afterwards. And so what I'm finding is, like, I'm going to set a worm trap in there in my castings so that we can catch the worms, because there's going to be worms. And you got to work that. And it's worth taking the worms out of the castings as they hatch. There's a big cocoon. I actually think we're done in this bin. So we've made a lot of room. And yeah, some of it's back there, but we have made a lot of room. So now we're going to give this a real good mixing over and fluffing. And we're going to inspect our worms as we go. Because this stuff is really, really wet and compacted in the bottom. See how compacted that gets? And you want to break that up and you want to aerate it so that it doesn't start to do an anaerobic thing and get stinky. You don't want our bin to get stinky. And it's heavy. There's a lot of moisture in here. I wouldn't want to grab this bin and carry it too far. I think it would be quite heavy. Got an itchy nose. See? As we get closer to the feed zone, there's a lot more worms. So we're going to set this up with a bigger area to dry too, so that we can dry the next batch of castings off a little more. And like, I guess we're coming into spring, and I have lots of projects that I'm going to be doing with my worm castings for worm tea on my land. And I can use the product. I need the product. There's a lot of worms in here. Just set that in the screen for now. And there's a... So to give you an idea, I started with 250 worms in this bin, and you could hardly find them. They're just, it's a big bin, and 250 worms just kind of disappears in it. Now, everywhere you look, there's a handful of worms. There's thousands of worms in here, guys. Thousands. And I'm okay with that. Let them buck. This is what you want. You keep feeding them, and they keep doing what they're supposed to do. There's the potato. There's my grapes that I fed. The worms are really in this stuff where the food is. That's what we want. You want them to move that way with the wedge so that they make it happen, you know. Make it so, number one. They're doing their job. They're doing what you want them to do. So I'm not going to feed them. I'm just here to take the castings and show you how I deal with it there. And we fed them on Tuesday. Today's Sunday. This is the back of my bin. This is like not even the most active part. And there's a lot of worms there. See? There's probably pretty close to 500-600 worms in that handful. So there, that's taking the castings up. That's part of this procedure, right? Well, the fun part is doing the rest of it. So I cover this stuff up with paper, and it helps keep the moisture in, helps absorb some of the moisture. The worms love paper, and I mean absolutely love paper. So we're gonna give them some more. Now the plastic is what I'm talking about. We're going to back it up, and we're going to leave a bigger area at our mature castings end to dry up so that it goes through the sifter a little better. Because in this 2-week feeding time, and it may be different because I came in and stirred them up and sifted and mixed it up, and I may have to do that. I may have to still mix them up. But in this system, I'm finding the moisture is quite a bit higher. So I'm going to leave this much open. Still going to cover it with the big one and leave it open to there. We don't. Okay, I'm just going to pause you for a minute and set you up to watch me try to sift some of the smaller bins for the first time. Okay, so this bin is the Guy's Cocoons and Babies from October 25th setup. There's still quite a bit of paper here, but I'm going to try to make some room in this bin because it's full. I'm not worried about contamination or cross-contamination because they all come from the same place, which was the Guys. So anything I can take out of here is going to help my capacity in the bin, right? So I'm just going to take what I can for now. And it doesn't have to be a whole bunch. Like I said, anything I can take out is going to give me a little bit of room. Because I need some room. It's getting full. And I'm just trying to skim off the dryer top. I know this bin's very wet, and I'm going to do the same thing to it. When I'm done, I'm going to fluff it up and let it go to bed, and hopefully the aeration part of it, getting more air into it, helps. I'm learning, especially on these small bins, because what's happening in these small bins is they're getting full. They're not like the Guy's big bin. The Guy's big bin is a pretty big bin. And I wouldn't say I'm getting that much out. I'm getting some out. And I'm getting down to the spot where it's too wet pretty fast. So, there we go. That's about as much as I'm going to get out of there. I'm going to take that castings and put it back here. We're going to fluff it up because it's just muddy down below. A lot of small worms. And I guess one of the pieces of advice I've got is don't be scared to try something. So if it gets muddy, either go back to what you're doing or change it to something different. Like, actually that looked pretty good. There's no one written in stone way of doing this. I'm not even sure what that is. But I know this stuff's really, really, really wet. So when we're done, we're going to add or mix up some more. Like this paper is put in on Tuesday dry and it feels damp. And that's okay, because that's how I moderate the moisture in my pen. That's part of how I moderate the moisture in my bins is with dry paper. A huge amount of worms in here. This bin is a lot of fun to check because this is the fruits of my labor. This is the fruits of my worm farm. These guys are 100% from my operation through the sifting of the guys and setting up the cocoons and letting them hatch, and just this is my setup. This is all from my farm, and I'm actually very happy with the way this has showed me that it works. It's very interesting. It's very if I can do it, anybody can do it, guys. There's no trick to what I'm doing. I'm just going to put some more paper in there. Cardboard and paper. Just to help pull up some of that moisture. And we'll call this bin done. Oh, have some Kleenexes. Stuff them in there. They help pull moisture up too. Okay, so, and we're going to set this plastic so that there's more breathing space. We're going to let more air in because it's a really good environment for the worms, because reproduction and hatching needs really good moisture. But it's not so good of an environment when you need to take out some of the castings because it's too wet to sift. So, I don't know if you can see this or not, but coffee, worms love coffee, and there's a lot of baby worms in the coffee. Those are not pot worms. I don't believe anyway. It might be. There's nothing wrong with pot worms in your system either. Anyway, we're just going to do the same thing. We're going to skim off some of this rough, bigger particles. And we're just going to take some of what we can. The reason I think I'm going to have to start doing this is I need to make room in these bins, because when you're working in, there's not that much room. They're full, and I could split them, but you know what, I don't necessarily want to just keep making more bins. I would rather harvest some of the castings out of the bins and get ready to use them in my projects in the spring. Now, I don't know if I'm taking 25 or 30% out of what I'm loading into the screen. There's quite a bit of it's going back in because it's so wet. But whatever I get, I get. And I'm okay with that because it makes a little bit of room in here. And the end result's the same. I'm going to have a few more castings to deal with, which is good. We're not getting that much out, but we're getting some out. And then we're going to do the same thing in this bin. We're going to mix them up, and we're going to fluff them up, and we're going to put them away. That's it for screening. Excuse me. I always seem to get something in my throat when I'm talking to you guys. Maybe it's because I usually do these things after breakfast and stuff happens. Okay, so let's do the same thing again. Let's move them around. Yeah, how many worms are in this one? And these are literally out of my red wiggler cocoons, right? I believe. Yeah. This is my first brooder bin that I set up. So this was set up probably back in August, September. It's very active. There's a lot of worms in here. You know, there's probably a couple thousand worms in this bin alone. Because my active feeding zone's back here. It's a neat bin. Air is your friend with worms when it comes to trying to get them the moisture moderated or controlling your moisture. You want to mix them up. And not just airing them up, but setting up so that you're not completely tightly covering. See, I'm going to leave this open, this end. You don't want to cover them up tight. Some of this paper in here. And I'm just going to send it like this. Like this is the way it's going to be. You're going to have that opening direct to the air. All right. Now, so we're going to do the double sift. There, I obviously put too much in my sifter. It gets clogged up if you put too much, especially with this high moisture stuff. You're better off putting less. And filling it more often because you just are. So I'm seeing quite a few cocoons in here. Some little worms. So I've got a bin here that is trying to get set up to do this thing. And we're going to just, wow, that's like this string. There's got to be baby worms in there. Has to be. Yep. Getting to be more worms in there. So we're going to just add this into this bin and continue. So all of our good stuff, our cocoons and our baby worms, and there'll still be baby worms in this stuff that make it through the screen, and cocoons. We're just trying to get some of them out before we store. And it's working. There's a cocoon. There's cocoons. And there's likely some wisps and there's a baby worm. So that's what we want to get into this bin, because this is going to help activate this bin up. And then we'll have more bins like we just pulled out and sifted that are active enough to be able to collect castings and do this. So I did a video last week also called Maintaining Your Worm Castings, or the worm castings. Quite a few cocoons in there. and you have to. You can't just forget about them. Because active castings want air. And they really do compact if you just leave them. And they'll dry out if you leave them in an open type of container. And you don't want your castings to dry out. You want them to remain moist in storage. There's a worm. Made it through the screen. I didn't put it there. It just made it through the screen. Going into that other bin. No worries. Fair few cocoons in every, and I know I'm not getting them all. I know there's cocoons going through the screen. That's okay by me. I will set up my worm trap and we'll try to catch them that way, and maybe sift later on once the worms have hatched and they're getting bigger in there. That worked pretty good the last time. But yeah, I am seeing a good amount of cocoons. The odd small worm. But keep in mind, a lot of the worms went back into the bins we sifted out of. This is just what's making it through the screen. There's a worm. And a cocoon. Yeah. There's a worm. There's, you know, they're actually quite funny. Because you can try and try and try and try to get them out. And you never get them all. Until the end. You know, like, it's, you're like, nature finds a way, right? And there's a lot of cocoons in this last little bit. If you ever think you're going to get all the worms out of a bucket, I don't know how much time you'd have to spend to make that happen. Because some of them are pretty small, and others just happen to make it through the screen no matter. Some of the full-size ones make it through the screen. They just happen to get their heads kind of through, and you know, the little gaffers, they're like a mouse. If they get any part of them through, they're going to go through. It's nice worm castings. And I am still seeing a lot of cocoons in there. So if we really wanted to, I guess we could screen them again, but I don't think I'm going to do that. So what we're going to do, I think, is I'm going to set that in this bucket, not this little bucket. This is my worm trap. So just to show you, this is you know, it's just a kid's toy bucket for storing toys or whatever. And I'm going to put the castings. There's 5, 6, maybe 8 pounds of castings there, guys. It's a heavy bucket. Okay. So there's my worm castings, and you know, they're very moist. They feel awesome. So this is what they say about worm castings. You smudge them into a ball and they stick, but you just add a little pressure and they break right back up. I mean, you can smudge them when you got too much moisture. You can make cake. Don't want to make cake. Give me a minute. I gotta go get a couple of food things and a little bit of wet bedding, and we're gonna set up the worm trap while you're here. Hang on. Okay, I'll show you how I set my worm trap up. Just some pre-starter bedding, and my bedding is coffee grounds, cardboard, and eggshells. Nothing too technical. Then I'm going to take some, I got some chunks of apple in here. Apple, grape, celery. Let's use that. That should do. You just need something. There's another chunk of apple. That should do. Now, and this paper's pretty dry, so I'm just going to throw a little bit of water at it at the end. Okay, so my drinking water mug. Okay, now bring this guy over here because I want you guys to kind of see what's going on. We're just going to dig down and plant that trap into the worm castings, and we're just going to mound right over top of it. Just like that. You can't even hardly see it. There it is. But I mean, as everything settles, when we come back to it, you'll see it. And that's it. We're going to put a bag over top of it. Like so. Don't get too technical. It doesn't have to seal up. And we're going to set it aside and let the worms hatch and let the trap work and just leave it go. So that's it for this. So if you like what we're doing, subscribe, share, comment. This is just extra bedding, a little bit of extra moisture, and I'm just going to throw that into this bin. Not even sure if you can see me over there. So this is where we put all of our overs from second. There's lots of cocoons, there's lots of little worms in there. See, you can put some extra water in this stuff because you want your hatches you want your worms, when you're trying to set up a new bin, to have lots of moisture. Really, what did I throw in there? A cup. It wasn't that much. So, I'm going to cover this up with this. And we're going to put a piece of plastic over that. Hold that moisture in. And we're going to put this over top too. And that's going to help hold more moisture in. And we're going to put them guys to bed. So, the screen's homemade. I made it myself. This stuff just gets set aside to dry down. bass catcher. Fold it back up. So, like I say, if you like what we're doing, subscribe and like and share and comment and tell us where you're talking to us from and all that wonderful stuff. We like to find out where people are visiting us from. It's neat, it's fun, it's part of the game. Hope you enjoyed it. Talk to you next time. Have a great one.